What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my best matchup through every week in September of this coming college football season. I'm going to be including the first week of college football season, even though there's not really a big time matchup. I'm going to be including it, and at this point, I'll take any football you can give me. I'm so ready for the season. But yeah, let's get into it. So for the first week of college football season, I believe on August 26th, the first matchup I have is Notre Dame versus Navy. Not a big week this week at all. This is the best matchup by far, and it's not too intriguing, even though these teams had a really good game last season. Notre Dame ended up winning by 3, and we all know about Notre Dame's season last year. Started off 0-2, bad loss to Marshall, ended up winning 8 of their last 10 games and their bowl game against South Carolina. Marcus Freeman really turned this team around, and I'm really excited for their 2023-24 campaign. They have Sam Hartman at quarterback, came over from Wake Forest. Really excited about that. He's always been so good at Wake Forest, and just completely having that team on the map, because otherwise they would not be. We know Navy's offense, just that wing T running the ball, and that's exactly what I expect them to come out on August 26th. So the most intriguing matchup of week 1 is Notre Dame versus Navy. And as soon as I say there's not a lot of big-time matchups in week 1, week 2 is loaded. We have LSU versus Florida State. That's Sunday, actually. I feel like LSU's been doing this for a while now, playing on Sundays the first week of the season. We also have Florida versus Utah. That game last year was ridiculous. Florida ended up upsetting number 7 Utah 29-26. I remember Utah's quarterback Cam Rising throwing a pick on the goal line, I think, the final seconds. But huge game last year, one of the best games of week 1. TCU versus Colorado. TCU coming off a national championship appearance, and then Colorado coming off one of the craziest off seasons in history, Deion Sanders, so that's why it makes the list. And then we also have the backyard brawl, North Carolina versus South Carolina. Really intrigued by that game as well, but I have to go with LSU versus Florida State. These two teams I picked to go so far this college football season. They could both be in the playoff, even after, I mean, obviously whoever takes a loss in this one, these teams could both make the playoffs this season. That's how high I think of them. But we know LSU went to the SEC championship last year, their first year under Brian Kelly. And after losing this game last year in week 1, they lost on a field goal attempt. A PAT attempt was blocked, and they lost 24-23. They were down 24-10 with like 3 minutes left or something. Scored 2 touchdowns. Wild last 2 or 3 minutes in that game. One of the best games of the season last year, in my opinion. But LSU made the SEC championship game, lost 50-30 to Georgia, and then ended up blowing Purdue out by almost 60 points. Florida State, they had a really good start to the season, lost 3 in the middle to really good teams, Wake Forest, NC State, Clemson. Finished up winning 6 in a row and won the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, so this team is on a roll. LSU has Jaden Daniels coming back at quarterback. They have John Emery, Noah Cain at running back. They also have Harold Perkins, the beast, coming after Jordan Travis in week 1 and coming after the whole SEC next year or this year, and I cannot wait to see him. I think I just said week 2. What I meant to say was the second weekend of week 1. I know it's kind of confusing, but for week 2, we also have some very intriguing matchups. Colorado versus Nebraska. I just spoke on Colorado, but Nebraska gets Matt Rule back to the college football head coaching tree. Former Baylor head coach, former Carolina Panther head coach. He also brings Jeff Sims with him to Nebraska, former Georgia Tech quarterback from last season. And Matt Rule speaks very highly of him. Obviously, he's going to. It's his quarterback. But this game has more drama and interest around it rather than off the field, rather than on the field. But I had to include it, man. I'm super interested in this game. Notre Dame versus NC State, another Notre Dame game. But NC State has, I expect them to have a really good season. Had a really good season last year with Devin Leary on the team, but he transferred to Kentucky. But this year, I think NC State will kind of fly under the radar, but still be able to upset some teams, maybe even Clemson at home this season. But yeah, super intriguing game on that one. Utah versus Baylor. I just spoke of Cam Rising earlier. And but Baylor, I expect a very big jump in them this season. Last season, I think they had a losing record, 6-7. But you don't really see that from Baylor too often, so I expect a huge jump for them. Also, Texas A&M versus Miami. Texas A&M ended up winning this game by 8 last season, 17-9. But these two teams kind of had the same trajectory last season. Huge potential, huge expectations, and just didn't follow through with that whatsoever. But as I've said a lot of times, even in this video, I expect a huge jump from both of these teams, and we'll see if that can happen week 2. But my number one game of this week is Texas versus Alabama. It's kind of no question in my opinion. This game last year was awesome. Texas brought them down to the wire. Quinn Ewers got hurt early in the second quarter, or they could have won the game. But big if, obviously a big if. Alabama ended up winning on a last-second field goal after a Bryce Young scramble to get them in field goal position. Alabama won 20-19 and just ran out of there. This was in Texas last season. So Alabama came in one by one and got out of there. But Texas having a quarterback competition, awesome quarterback competition. Quinn Ewers will have the job. But Arch Manning's right there up behind them. So this quarterback room is loaded. Also, they have Xavier Worthy. Josh Pate, a podcast to listen to, who's famous by now. But he has Xavier Worthy as his sneaky Heisman pick. So expect big things from him. Texas also just lost 2 running backs in the draft. And so Bijan Robinson obviously was a beast last season. Alabama, I do not think Jalen Milroe will be the starting quarterback of this team going into week 2. I believe it'll be Ty Simpson. And I expect big things, obviously expect big things from Alabama. But I expect this game to be really interesting and a really good game. All right, coming into week 3, it does not stack up against week 2. But that is okay. Still a lot of good matchups, and I promise you I'll be watching probably 12 hours this Saturday anyway. So TCU versus Houston is on this day. I spoke about TCU earlier. I didn't speak about the roster. I don't know who's their starting quarterback is going to be. I know Max Duggan obviously went to the draft to the Chargers, and he'll be holding the clipboard for Justin Herbert for a few years. But I know Sonny Dykes, no matter who's quarterback and no matter who's on the field, he will have this team ready. Houston, on the other side of things, they get Donovan Smith from Texas Tech. He's been pretty good at Texas Tech over the years. I don't know if he will start or not, but it's Houston's first year in the Big 12. Very excited about that. Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, all coming in the Big 12 their first season this year. A lot of big matchups just stemming from that. Also, this is an in-state matchup, so it had to be on my honorable mentions list. Tennessee versus Florida. Also threw in Georgia versus South Carolina this week. We know last year Georgia pummeled South Carolina, and South Carolina's very rocky start to the season. Ended up finishing well with Spencer Rattler, doing pretty good to end the season, but didn't really expect too much from this game, but it does draw some interest. And I also threw in Arkansas versus BYU. Heck of a game from last year. I think Arkansas won 52-35. And that first half, the points were ridiculous. KJ had a great game. Rocket Sanders had a great game. Their quarterback, Jaron, I forgot their quarterback's name from last year, but he was drafted. And also their receiver went to the Rams, Pakua, I want to say. I forget how you pronounce his name, but it was a great game last year. I could have picked a homer pick, but I decided to be professional and pick Tennessee versus Florida. This was one of Tennessee's breakout games last year. We're up 38-21 with about 5 minutes left. Ended up winning 38-31, and Florida had a chance at a Hail Mary to tie the game, but didn't happen. For Tennessee, we get to see Joe Milton this year. Cannot wait to see him. Obviously, Tennessee had such an amazing season. Best season, probably 20 years. Maybe they were ranked number 1 at one time. So best season maybe since the year after Peyton Manning. They won it all 1998, I want to say. But Florida, I think they have Graham Mertz starting at quarterback. Didn't have a great season. Ended up going 6-7, losing to Oregon State in a very ugly game in the bowl game. So don't really know what to say about Florida. But at all these matchups, I picked Tennessee versus Florida as my best matchup of week 3. All right, moving on to week 4, another loaded week this college football season. We got Alabama versus Ole Miss. Spoke about Alabama earlier. Ole Miss has a good quarterback problem. They have 3 starter quality quarterbacks. They have Jackson Dart from last season, who showed flashes, but I believe can get beat out fairly easily. They have Spencer Sanders, a transfer from Oklahoma State, who's been so good for Oklahoma State these past couple of years. Pretty surprised he transferred, but I believe there was a culture problem at Oklahoma State last year. LSU transfer Walker Howard, who was awesome for them in the SEC championship game. He's a flamethrower. He can throw that thing 60 yards, and he did against Georgia in the SEC championship game. But so yeah, Lane Kiffin will have to decide who he goes with this year. It's a good problem to have. Also, Quinshon Judkins, maybe the best running back in college football, and we'll see. This game last year, Alabama won 30-24, and Ole Miss had a shot at the very end to win it. I think Jackson Dart threw a bad pass on 4th and 18 or so, but Ole Miss was up early. Moving on, we have UCLA versus Utah, a pretty big breakout game for Dorian Thompson-Robinson and UCLA last year. Top 20 matchup, ended up upsetting them 42-32, I think was the score. Also, Zach Charbonnet just ran the ball all over Utah's defense. But Utah has a 5-star quarterback in Dante Moore. Dorian Thompson just got drafted to the Cleveland Browns, had a really good Hall of Fame game last week. So, yeah, super excited for him. He's an awesome guy to watch. But Dante Moore, don't know if he'll be starting by this time or not. I know they're going to try to bring him in. Chip Kelly's going to try to bring him in very slowly. But also intriguing game. Oklahoma versus Cincinnati, another one of those newly Big 12 teams, and really intriguing matchup between these two. Lastly, Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Last year, this was week 1. Ohio State ended up winning a kind of disappointing game, 21-10. Notre Dame looked stout early, but just couldn't really hold up on the offensive end. Ohio State was just too good. Ohio State, don't really know who their starting quarterback is at the moment. I know they have 3 or 4 good quality starter quarterbacks on the team, but it really doesn't matter. They have Marvin Harrison. They have Travion Henderson coming back. They have Emeka Egbuka, and they also have a Lau defensive end. I can't remember how to say his name, but man, he had a huge breakout game against Penn State last year. And Notre Dame will know who he is that night. So another one, Arkansas versus LSU. This is known as the Harold Perkins game, where he just blew up the quarterback every single time last year. LSU ended up winning 13-10 in a very ugly game. Arkansas was without their starting quarterback. And my pick for this week has to be Florida State and Clemson. Talked about Florida State earlier, and I expect huge things for them. And this is the first this is the second test and the first ACC test for them this year. Florida State versus Clemson. Clemson, they have Cade Klubnik in the backfield throwing it, and they'll be good again. So this is my pick for the week. Super excited about the ACC this year. Now, the last Saturday of September, week 5, we have some really good matchups this week. USC versus Colorado. Caleb Williams, reigning Heisman winner, and he might win it again, who knows, versus Shedeur Sanders, quarterback for Colorado, Deion Sanders. You got Lincoln Riley. So huge matchup. Cannot wait for this one. Baylor versus UCF, another Big 12 newcomer. Just the differences in play styles and stuff is just what really intrigues me about these newcomers in the Big 12. Also, LSU versus Ole Miss this week. Pretty good game down in Baton Rouge last season. Ole Miss came in hot, up 17-3 at one point, and then LSU just went off, won 45-20 after being down 17-3. So what a turnaround that is. Also, Texas A&M versus Arkansas. I hate to even bring it up. One of the worst losses I've ever seen as an Arkansas fan, and that's a long list. We were up 14-0, looking fantastic, and Texas A&M drove down the field 14-7. We fumbled on the goal line, 14-13. They ended up missing the PAT. We lose 23-21 after a missed field goal with about a minute and a half left. So Really heartbreaking stuff. I talked about Texas A&M earlier with a big bounce back this season. Hopefully Arkansas can go back to the year before, have another 8-9 win season. I'd be happy with that. But don't really know what to expect with this Arkansas team. Obviously still have KJ, still have Rocket Sanders, top 2, top 3, maybe top 1 running back in college football. So obviously I'll always be a fan. This is in Dallas. I hate it. I wish it was in Fayetteville or A&M, and just a regular home and away game. That's all I want from this one. I'm tired of it being in Dallas. I feel like it's bad luck. But my number one pick of Week 5 has to be South Carolina versus Tennessee. God, South Carolina versus Tennessee. We have Spencer Rattler versus Joe Milton. Cannot wait for this game at all. Obviously, South Carolina won 63-38 last season. Tennessee came into South Carolina and all they saw was flashing lights. It was touchdown after touchdown. This is the game where Hendon Hooker went down late in the fourth quarter after the game was pretty much decided. So wish the best for him. Wish a speedy recovery. He's now with the Lions. He got drafted by the Lions. He'll be backing up Jared Goff and coached by Dan Campbell. And if he ever gets the number 1 spot, boy, does he have some weapons over there. But for this game, South Carolina just had everything going for them. Spencer Rattler was the best quarterback in college football history this night. That's how good he was. But this game's in Tennessee. It's must-watch football, and I can't wait for it. So yeah, guys, those are my picks for the best matchups for the whole month of September and the last weekend in August. But I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe for more. I'll have more college football content. Also have some NBA content I just put these past couple of days. But yeah, I'll be doing these once a month when football actually starts in just a couple weeks, man. I can't wait. Thank y'all.